Hit the live button, so we are being recorded at this point.
So who
Okay.
else is here? I see Mike, Ed, and Sue, and Jeff. Are there others?
This is Jim. I'm here.
Oh, Jim, good. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
It's funny, we had 7
Diane.
people just a second ago. I'm not sure what just happened. So we got Jim, Jeff, Sam, Ed, Susan, Diane. We lost somebody because we did have 7 a minute ago.
Okay. Well, hopefully they'll be back. Liz or Jerry?
It was Jerry. Here he is. He just
Oh, okay.
came back on. He's rejoining right now. Jerry, can you hear us?
Yeah, Mike, I think I'm back. For some
Okay.
reason, it just kicked me out, but I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good.
Jeff, it's all yours. We are live.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Minutes today. I don't know what's going on, but there's always this YouTube video, so we can come back to it and submit minutes. But let's see. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's Thursday, December 16th, 2021. It is 7:04 p.m. This is a meeting of the Grand Island Conservation Advisory Board. Let's see, everyone in attendance is a voting member tonight. I think we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us. So
Yeah, so you have 7 that can vote. I can't vote.
7 that can vote. Yep, I didn't see you. You're down there in the corner there, Mike.
Yep.
All right. So I didn't see any minutes come through the email. Did we get the minutes?
I did not see them.
All right. So maybe we table that till the next meeting,
Not a problem.
the consent agenda.
You know, I also think my minutes of a couple of months ago were never approved. Were they?
Do we have them?
Yeah, I sent them out
Okay.
a while back, though.
All right. Hang on.
Maybe I'll just, I missed last month's meeting, but I don't recall that you, I don't know. I'll check. Maybe you and I can check on it.
All right. Yeah, there's the October meeting minutes. Did we approve
we
the
did
October
not.
minutes?
We definitely did not get the minutes from the last meeting. I'm pretty sure of that.
Right. We definitely did not. I have the October minutes.
So that would be Tom. Is Tom here tonight?
He has not joined us at this
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Let's see. So that was from I'm just looking through my email. It was an email sent on November 23rd by Diane.
That's right. That's right. So you didn't get them in time.
I think that's right, yeah.
All right. Well, if I'm the only one looking at them, maybe we'll table that. I want to make sure that everybody else, I want more eyes on them, I guess. It looks good to me.
Actually,
I
I've
just
got
read
them up
through
too, Jeff. So.
Okay. All right. Let's just take a minute then and just reread it, see if there's any corrections.
You could share them on the screen if you wanted, Jeff.
The way this is working today, I'm afraid to do that, but I'll try it.
Yeah, I'm wireless today too, so
Are you?
yeah.
Do you want me to just send them out to everybody again?
Is this showing?
Yes,
I can
it
see
is.
it.
Looks good. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that page looks good.
All right.
Including Diane getting congratulated there.
Do you want me to make a motion to accept?
I think it looks good. Go for it.
All right, I make a motion to accept the October minutes of the meeting.
I second. All approve?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Motion's carried. Minutes from October 28th, 2021 are approved. We'll do the November and December minutes in January.
Okay.
All right, so let's see here. Second thing, project updates. We got I just kind of left this as a standing thing just in case anything has changed, anything we need to be aware of.
Yeah,
Anything
so
from,
if
Go
you
ahead,
want,
Mike.
I could just kind of hit on the different ones. So for the long road, the developer is still looking at our changes or whatever we suggested for the scoping. And they are kind of pushing back on it, and I can't get into much details on that. But so that basically it's almost there's certain things you don't have to repeat, like archaeological, because that really doesn't change, but just about most everything else, because of the length of time, we are requesting a reassessment. And they're pushing back on it, but we'll see what ends up coming of that. But no new developments, there are no actions before the board. And then
Okay.
Southpointe, any questions on Long Road?
will any of that become public, or is that kind of just behind the scenes stuff?
It's more legal issues, so that's other than what I just shared, that's probably the most you're gonna know about it
Okay,
until something real happens. They would have to, initiate a lawsuit, which didn't occur. I don't know what I can and can't share, but let's just say there's
That's
no
fine,
action
Mike.
at this point. There's not much there's no activity going on that's of any substance at this point.
okay,
And then for Southpointe, I don't believe there's anything new going on at this point in time. We are waiting for, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 plans and all the activities that will be associated with that. East River, I
Okay.
know there's activities going on there, nothing before the board at this time. However, that is moving along, or we'll be hearing something soon, I suspect, on that one. Webb Road, which is Rivertown, which we just reviewed. That one is moving into the concept plan and going before the planning board. I don't think it was on this agenda, but I would expect it to be soon. And there's another project, which is Gun Creek, which I believe may have been on the planning board meeting this week, if I'm not mistaken. So that one is probably coming up soon.
Is
Which
there,
is, I think that's
that mean
phase
extension?
3, Gun Creek. Sorry, go ahead, Diane.
no, that was me. I was just wondering what phase that was, because I think they're building townhouses now.
Correct. Yes. So that's,
It-
it's at least phase 3 if it's not phase 4.
if this is the phase that's going to connect Park Lane out to Whitehaven?
I
Ransom?
have not actually had a chance to look at it. I only just saw some emails about it in the last 2 weeks. But I do know
Okay.
that is one of their goals, is to put that connection through there, which might provide some relief to Ransom and Stony Point.
So
I do
that's,
know that that's in the plan. I'm not positive if that connection happens with this phase.
that's the development that you enter from Whitehaven, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
There's also some trails involved with this one, but I have not had a chance to look at it. So I do think that they're offering some trails as part of this.
Mike,
So
is there
that's
any
something we
tree
may-
removal with that one?
I would have to go and look at the property. I know part of it is, yeah, I'd have to go and look. I'm honestly not sure. There's definitely some places, parts of this overall project that were, you know, pretty nice environmentally at the time. However, now it's all houses, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where this falls. It might be in, because there's a section over there that doesn't have many trees. But the
Yeah, I
deer
thought
still
most
love
of that
even-
was field.
Yeah, even in those fields, though, obviously the deer still love that. That's good for food, you know.
Yep.
Deer, birds, bees, you name it, wildlife, woodchucks.
Instead of digging it underneath the creek, right? That's the septic was under, or excuse me, the sewer line was going underneath like a bridge over Gun Creek.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm just looking for verification there. I
I
think this is
can't
the
verify
one.
that. Honestly,
Okay.
I haven't looked at Gun Creek in quite a while, and I've just seen some emails about it. It's just come back on the radar within the last 4 weeks for myself. But it's moving. It's definitely, you're gonna hear a lot about it in the next, probably in the next 4 to 8 weeks. Along with all these other projects.
Okay.
So
Did
there's gonna be
anybody?
a lot going on. We may want to consider pulling someone in to present at our next meeting even. And I guess the question
Yeah,
would be, we've done Rivertown, Long Road's that's the furthest one out at this point. So there's Gun Creek, there's I'm not sure if they're calling it the Lighthouse Point. We may want to consider seeing if we could bring in one of those folks just to present and tell us what they're thinking of. I don't know if anyone has a
That-
preference on that.
You think the Gun Creek one, they're gonna move on before the one out in East River?
It is further along in the process,
Okay.
mainly because it's a phase as opposed to breaking ground for the first time.
So have the whatever phase it's doing next, have those plans been to the planning board yet?
I am unsure if it was on the planning board this past Monday. If it wasn't on this past Monday, my sense is it's coming. We'll be seeing it soon.
Okay,
Okay. All
And
right,
I'm sorry, I
so
don't have more information. I've just seen a few emails about it from engineering, and one of the emails was talking about the trails that they're considering as part of that project. But I've
All right,
been
so-
on a
so maybe
vacation
we-
for the
maybe
last
we
week
make
where
contact
most of that came through. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
maybe we make contact with Gun Creek developers and see if we can get them in, and then also maybe make contact with the East River and see if we can get them lined up for February, so we're not having a meeting
Yeah.
where we're having multiple developers speak to us.
Good idea.
So-
And that way they can plan for it too.
I think we could probably use a Gun Creek refresher here just to, it was an extensive project, and I know they've been working on it a while, and I know people already live there, and but like seeing the next phase and seeing what comes next would be good to get that public. So
Sounds fine. So
all
I
right,
will
and
work on lining that up, and I'll work with you, Jeff, to schedule it.
okay, I did not have a chance. I've been really busy. I did not have a chance to get out near Southpointe. Are we still looking to line that up to just do kind of not Southpointe, Rivertown, to just do a walkthrough for that area? If anybody has, I know it's going to be cold, and I don't know who's in town and who's out of town, but that week after Christmas works for me. So I might try to make contact and see if we can go out for, half an hour, weather dependent, maybe an hour.
and then
Sign
let
me
us,
up. I'd be interested.
Yeah, I'd be
I
interested.
think I
too.
could do it too.
Okay.
Okay, you guys are okay with waiting till then? I just, my
Yeah.
schedule's kind of crazy, so,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that,
Okay.
I think that's a good time. After Christmas, the next 2 weeks, next 10 days, I still have to go shopping, so.
right, sounds
Procrastination is a
good.
terrible thing.
All right, so that's the developments then, and I nothing more to add. I think we're good there. Anybody else have any questions? All right, so next we put in a bulk of the meeting, and I read through this, and that is Diane sent those tree questions out for Davy. I was reading those questions, and I would like to know the answers to those questions. Some of them are pretty good. So I don't know if we can share it on the screen, or if you guys feel comfortable just bringing it up off the screen. It's the one that starts with planting plan questions. Question 1. Well, first of all, I'm going to let Diane take this so she can elaborate on it a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure everybody has the correct document.
okay. So just to give you a little background, you know, the inventory supposedly is done, but we haven't seen the results yet. But the second phase of the grant was to prepare a community, like I forget the name, community forest management plan. And so we broke into just small committees. And so Paul and I decided we would work on the planting plan, and we had no idea until we got this phone call. We had no idea about all these questions. It's too bad we hadn't seen them ahead of time. So, and there's a couple other management plans the town needs to do for the grant. One is on invasive species, and another one is on, I think, emergency preparedness. There might be a third one, which I don't remember at the moment. But anyway.
And Diane, where do these questions come from?
So, yeah. So Lori Brocklebank, of course, is the one managing the grant for Davy. But she arranged a phone call meeting with Paul Yeager and I, and this woman named Mariah, who works for Davy also, and must help towns to write management plans, because she's the one who started firing these questions at us for Paul and me, just to get some background. And my understanding is she's going to actually write up some results of what we've given her, and then we'll have a draft management plan to look at. This particular one is just for planting trees. So they came from her. I don't know. I think, you know, she's with Davy, but she doesn't live locally. She lives in Massachusetts, which surprised me. But I think this is one of her jobs that she does for Davy. So with that background, obviously there's a bunch of questions where we just said no, like we don't have this in place, but these are all things to consider for a management plan if we want them. So maybe we'll just start with numbers. I think we'll just go through it one by one, and you can throw in your thoughts, and I can add them to what Paul and I took notes from Paul and I. So for example, number 1, how many trees are planted in the town each year? So we, of course, had to say that it's different every year. Some years and I'm going to go back and look through all our records of planting. Some years we've planted, like, was it 8 or 10 at the high school? I forget the number. Another year we planted 5 in town commons. So every year is different. And some years we haven't planted any. So she just wants me to send her records of the plantings we have done, with the idea that out of this management plan, we might want to come up with a figure of how many we'd like to see planted every year. So
Doesn't the
Paul and I-
town have to answer that question? Don't? Because I mean, we're not planting trees, the town is. And
So
just,
here's what we would like to have happen. We'd like to meet, it's just not a good time to meet with the holidays, but Paul and I thought it would be good to meet with Dave Cole from Parks Department, Tom Cesari from Parks Department, couple people from the Parks and Rec Board, just so we're all giving feedback into these questions. Oh, and somebody from Highway, probably Dick. So we can come up with answers that pretty well represent us. And see,
Diane?
yes,
I think in part the answer depends on the results of the tree survey, so they have all that criteria that they're reporting out. So if, for example, they say, 25 trees are deemed, critical, they need to be removed, then that would kind of be a baseline. Okay, so let's replace them, or they might say in 5 years, or depending on the.
I know. I said to Mariah, I said to both of them, we need to see the inventory before we can be too thorough.
Right.
and these
and I-
are, the inventory is only the right of ways.
And
From the
some of
road?
our parks and bike paths as well.
I actually saw them surveying trees off the trail near Galagly, like in the middle of the woods. It was so funny. Hello?
They're surveying trees in Galagly?
No, the Grand Island trails that abut Galagly.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
see.
so like in the middle of the woods, I saw this person. I'm thinking, what are they doing? And so I went up and talked to them, and they were, I guess that was at the end, and they had, time left or whatever.
So to answer your question, Jim, yeah, more people need to give feedback into this. Which I did,
I'm
Mariah
just gonna
originally.
warn everybody, I've had the lights flicker here and then my internet's a little weak, so with the wind, it must be the wind is causing some issues, just in case. If you suddenly lose me, hopefully, in theory, the meeting won't be ended in case we lose power here.
Okay,
By the way, Paul's on the call too.
Hey, Paul.
Well,
is that
Yep.
Paul?
Yeah,
Really-
that's me. Sorry.
Oh, hi, Paul.
I actually drove there and found out nobody was there. So
Oh,
Oh,
I thought you were going to Illinois today.
yeah, we're gonna go tomorrow. We pushed it off a day.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry you went to town hall. How do you
Yeah.
think we should
No.
proceed with all these questions?
I just think we ought to read them, see if there's any different input than we already provided, and then we
Yeah.
can follow up with them and say, if everybody sort of thinks we gave pretty much the same answer, then I think we're good from our side. If we got input from the rest of the board there that says points that we didn't bring up, then we need to go back and follow up and bring them up, right? I would think it's going to be similar to Judy's group or the Parks Department group. They basically have the same ideas as we already said. Then I think we're pretty much done, right?
Well, I think it's important for us to have a meeting with some of these stakeholders. I've already contacted Tom Cesari.
Yeah,
Dave
no,
Cole.
I agree. I'm just saying that if
Oh.
everybody comes up with the same thing, we just say, there's no other input to give you. We're good. And if someone comes up, the Parks Department says, hey, we got a different idea. We think we should do A, then we need to bring that up, right? So
Yep.
I think it's what we ask the questions, get our feedback, and then go back to them with either we're good or here's some additional input.
Go back to who?
The two ladies we talked to on the phone.
Oh, okay. I did arrange for us to wait until after the first of the year to come up with our answers and also meet with the Parks Department and so forth. I'm just
Okay.
not, so we had to
So
answer
can we-
no, we had to answer no to quite a few of these questions because we don't have a lot of things in place. And whether we want all these aspects to a plan or not, that's up to us. We're creating this for our town and we want it to be usable. And one main thing she kept referring to, what is your vision for what you want the town to be doing about trees?
Right, so Mike, where do we stand on the tree ordinance?
Well, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah, we have that coming up next.
Yeah, we'll discuss
Okay.
that in a minute.
Good.
But,
Because
still
that sort of
working on
plays into this sort of plays into the whole thing, right? So, we told them long-range planning, people like the rural atmosphere, they like the nature. Diane pointed them to the appendix at the back with, tasks and long range, short range, medium range, right? So they were going to read that. We told them that, we have a tree ordinance we've been working on, but it's not done. And, they were happy to hear that, but we said, we haven't made progress. We haven't been successful in 20 some years. So we provided all that information to them. And I think the tree ordinance, if it looks like it's going forward, will be helpful. If it's not going anywhere, then, I believe they did suggest that we have something like that.
I do think we're going to end up with something at the end. Still yet to be proven what it will be.
Okay. So, Dan, should we rip over those questions really quick and just give it a couple of minutes on them, or
Sure.
how are we
Can
going to get the
everybody-
feedback? I would think that's the best way to do it.
Can everybody see the my screen or not? Did that work?
Yes.
Okay, so you see the questions?
Yeah.
I think maybe, Diane, I know you have some answers to this already, but maybe we just kind of quickly go through and address maybe short discussions on each of the questions. Will that work?
Sure.
I mean,
Well,
I can write down the
things-
notes and I can email this to you afterwards. A lot of them, the answers to. Some of them we absolutely know the answers to.
Depend on the tree ordinance, right? Like, for example, 1B, are all removed trees compensated for with the new planting? That depends on the tree ordinance, doesn't it?
Well, there's-
Exactly.
Not necessarily.
I
Go
would
ahead.
probably say, let's assume no tree ordinance for now to answer these
Yeah.
questions. I would
Yeah.
agree with you, Ed, that if we pass the ordinance, B will have a very different answer.
Right, okay.
So, all right. So, how many trees are planted by the town each year? Diane said, some years none, some years 1 or 2, some years 8. But that's just the plantings on, by the town each
Yeah.
year. And now, so is A also by the town? How many trees would you ideally plant each year? Or is that like town
well-
and developments?
Oh, no, just town plantings.
Okay.
And
Right, and we did do River Oaks, which was 70 or something, Diane said, right? So a couple of years we had bigger numbers.
Mhm.
Do you really know the answer to that, or we're just guessing?
we're guessing
We're-
based
we're-
on
we're
what we
guessing.
know.
All right.
And hopefully the Parks Department might have a better answer, right? They probably plant them.
Right.
So
So,
for what we did is we gave them, here's some situations. We did Galapa, we did the high school, we did a couple up at the Welcome Center. We gave out, right? We went out, we gave out several hundred trees, so they were happy to hear that. And they took all those notes because we did the Arbor Day every year. Yep.
And one thing we discussed was, we made it very clear to these women that we don't have a budget for planting trees right now. And so we might start, like it says, how many trees would you ideally plant each year? Well, we could set a goal for the first couple of years that we have a management plan, maybe 2 or 5 or something, and then work it. Maybe 5 years from now, we want to increase that number if we can increase our budget. It's going to depend a lot on the town and whether they're willing to put money toward doing this.
Well, really, if the tree ordinance goes through the way it is right now, some folks had said that there was no teeth to the tree ordinance. If clear cutting occurs without a permit, the trees need to be replaced. And it not necessarily at the location where the clear cutting occurred, but so that can possibly contribute to some of the replacement. But the tree ordinance as well, it does have mitigation, which includes replacement of trees. So I
Yeah,
would think that would fall under there somewhat, although it's not town property, but some of those trees may end up on town property as part of the mitigation plans.
Right, we just can't rely on it right now. Does anyone have any other thoughts about ideally how much we'd like
Yeah,
to?
but right now it's all haphazard, you know, there's no real
is.
plan for planting trees.
It is.
There's no
haphazard.
budget for it, you know, the ordinance will cover trees that, you know, like clear cut, but to me, you know, we don't really have a plan or a
Yeah, there's a
budget, so how
removal
can you
budget,
say
there's not a
so?
planning budget. I would agree. So I think the 1 to 8 probably is accurate at this point.
Oh, I just threw that in there. Do you have any current planting goals? Which we've been discussing that. Do citizens plant in the right of way?
So I'd probably say the answer to number 2 would be just that that's in development. So there's a group that's working on that at this point. It's in development.
Okay, that's a good answer. Yeah. Let me write that down.
There's actually a committee, is that correct, Diane? What's the group called that's working on this?
This management plan? I
More
mean,
in terms of the tree, all the grant money and things of that
It's-
nature.
there's a tree committee.
It is a tree committee. That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So the way we
So-
answered this next one, do citizens plant in the right of way? We answered that some of them may, but our highway and engineering department have a policy now that they don't want anyone to plant in the right of way. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, so I would actually respond to that one is going forwards. The answer is actually no. So I would think this is more forwards looking at this point. You know, over the past decades, has some trees been planted there? Yes.
Yes.
However, going forwards, there will not be trees planted in the right of way.
Right.
M-
And
So-
nobody,
Mike, one of the things that came up was, honestly, who knows what the right of way is, right? So I got a ditch. Is that if I plant next to the ditch on the inside towards my house, is that a right of way or not? How
So
far is
most-
the right of way?
In most locations, so if there's any telephone poles, the telephone pole usually marks about where the right of way ends.
Ah, okay.
so
So
that's one
we
of the
thought maybe
ways.
there was some education needed. That's all.
But,
It was
but
just a point.
literally in any road, it could be a different distance from the center of the road. So I mean, it could be 11 feet, it could be 20 feet. So I mean, it varies from location to location, town-wide, island-wide, just so you know.
How
And then,
about
you know, if
the,
it's Erie
like,
County versus town road, that makes a difference as well.
Yeah, we brought that up on several occasions, but we're only talking town.
Correct.
how about
Yeah.
when you have a development or a new house, isn't there a regulation that says you're supposed to plant trees? Are those
Not
in
in the right of
way?
way, only on the property, not on the right of way.
Oh, okay.
Not within the right of way. And just so that everyone understands, you know, when it's a sapling, not a big deal, but once it becomes a big tree, someone, you know, runs off the road, hits a nice spot, runs off the road and clobbers a big oak tree. And, you know, it's deadly. So we're really trying to prevent adding any additional hazards within the right of way.
So
that could
let's not,
be Unhealthy for folks.
the neighborhood, the plantings between the sidewalk and the curb really add a lot of character and a lot of value to these neighborhoods. And, that's the precedent, from the past. I do understand that, it's not as much accidents as it is, okay, a main breaks and you gotta, dig down, you gotta take down the tree to get to the main. That does not occur that often, but that does occur. And I gotta think that that's the primary reason for them saying this. I
No,
just feel
actually,
like
we have
that
a
is,
policy, even in terms of placing a rock or any kind of an obstruction. If you put a big boulder in the right of way and then someone hits it, and I can tell you right now, right on Ransom Road, I was at a accident where the car ended up literally totally melted down by the time it was over. He hit the boulder, flipped it over, the car caught on fire. Luckily, the young guy got out of the car, but it was really a bad wreck. I mean, it could have been really a catastrophe, and it was because that big rock was in the middle of the right of way. So, I mean, it's definitely one of the main concerns is there's liability. I mean, the property owner takes on liability putting an obstruction there as well. Because in
Well,
theory,
another-
all of the new
careful.
builds this year, at least in my neighborhood, have trees out front, like trees between the sidewalk and the road. Like, I mean, that's where they are.
oh, it's,
So this-
well, that's
this
probably
policy
not a
is-
town road. It's probably a development that owns the roads where we
Okay.
don't control that at all.
All right,
So, like-
we should probably move on to the next questions, right? We're
Yeah,
just trying to whip
okay.
through the questions, but,
Yep,
so,
do that.
okay.
All right.
So number 4, are we, and to answer about the right-of-way trees, the town does not maintain those or do anything unless they're a hazard. Isn't that right? If they're identified after
is
this
correct.
inventory as a hazard, I would think the town would get in touch with the owners and let them know.
Diane, wouldn't it make sense to send some of these questions directly to the appropriate town, like the highway department, so that you're using their language and we're not interpreting what their policy is?
Yeah. I sent them these questions, and after the first of the year,
Yeah,
I want to sit down with them and get how
Yeah.
they would word it. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I almost think that this would be better answered not by the conservation board, but by that tree committee, because some of these,
Well,
you really
the
need Dick to help with the answers, I think.
Yeah, we are. That's the plan. After the first of the year, my plan is to get together Paul and I and Dick and Dave and Tom. And Judy Schmidt said she wanted to be involved, and one other person to me, it seems like the stakeholders are the highway department, the parks department, the parks advisory board, our advisory board, and maybe that's it.
I think that's probably it.
And once we see the actual results of the inventory, I think it'll be easier to answer some of these questions as well.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I think. it would
So
be
you're
better
right.
To have the right people answering these questions.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but hopefully you've looked through them and maybe you have any strong feelings about any of them that you want to say. For number 4, we decided we do have a couple different lists of trees that are appropriate. I know the planning board uses a particular list. We're gonna sit down with Paul and I and Dave Cole. We're gonna sit down and try to pare down Steve Burtz's list. His is very thorough. But we thought maybe we could work on that list and get it approved and make it a standard for the planning department and for anybody.
And Steve Burtz's list, that was just trees in general. I think when you're talking about trees that are being planted adjacent to a street, you have to pick particular species based on their impact on sidewalks. I think it would be a somewhat pared down list than Steve Burtz.
Definitely, yeah.
Steve's good for homeowners to think about, what kind of trees do we want in our yards. But when you're talking about trees on town property and particularly trees near a right of way. Maybe other highway departments have some idea of it, sense of it too, or maybe some municipalities that have actual arborists, maybe they might have some ideas as well. Or maybe maybe Tree has some ideas.
Well, the Buffalo City Forester has a wonderful list. He has one group that's for trees that might get a lot of salt in the winter. He has curbside trees. He has a bunch of different lists, which we could also look at.
That makes
And
sense.
He's already divided them into categories.
That sounds good, Diane.
Yeah. I'll jot down to look at his list too. Any other thoughts on appropriate trees? If any of you want to help look at these lists, I'm going to try to get them together before the beginning of the year.
I'll look at it, Diane.
Okay. So let's see. So yeah, there's a bunch of things here. Invasive status, salt tolerance, mature size of trees, so forth. Where does the town acquire their trees? The only thing I know is we've used Russell's. But Dick can tell us probably other sources. And interestingly enough, Lori suggested what was it called? Murray's trees. She says the city of Buffalo has used them a lot. And they have I think a better guarantee than Russell's. If you buy at Russell's, which we did the year we planted the five trees in Town Park, if you're, we only had a guarantee of 1 year, I think, or we didn't get a guarantee at all because we were, I can't remember. But this other one, they have a longer guarantee, so we can look into that.
Yeah, if you're the ones we planted at the high school, not that I'm
Yes.
plugging any business, but they're all doing fantastic.
Yeah,
And we got those from Boston Hill Nursery. I remember Boston Hill Nursery.
okay.
They're all varieties of red maple, and we planted near the road, so they're salt tolerant, clay tolerant, and they're doing great.
That's
Jeff,
great. And
Jeff,
I
is the
imagine
school
somebody's
cooperating?
actually,
Who waters those things?
So the first 2 years we bought watering bags. Sometimes the teachers would go fill them up. Sometimes the grounds crew would go fill them up. But the first couple years, having the water bags helped out. Last year, I don't think they didn't get, and last summer they didn't get any water, and they're still doing fine. So
The first 2 years are usually the critical time.
mhm.
Once they get established, they don't need watering. But a lot of trees that we lose in the first 2 years.
yeah,
Mhm.
we do, because we don't have any, we don't have anyone delegated to do that, so,
Well, some of the
That's-
trees in the town commons were cut down, so there's that.
yes, they were. Let's see, what else have we got?
Can you get a contract for trees and watering? Like water.
Usually
bag?
when you buy a tree, you can you get the trees. You can get a package where you get the tree, the stakes, the cables, the watering bag, and that's like, honestly, I know prices might have went up, but I'm guessing it's about $150 a tree.
But they don't come in water. They just provide,
No,
Yeah.
we just have the watering bag. Now the watering bags do, it's a slow water, but they do need to be filled up periodically.
Yeah.
right. And they should become a standard for any trees that we plant, that the town plants.
Yeah.
Because in the past, when we did a lot of those relief plantings, which we did a lot, they weren't tended to once they were planted. And so we lost a bunch of those. Anyway, okay, let's see what
Yeah.
else.
The school district owns an auger now that plants those trees because they planted so many. They planted some around the Sidway playground for shade for the really little kids. So like they rented an auger at first. Now they bought an auger. So if you have the equipment, I feel like it can be a fast process.
That's great. I was thinking in the future, it'd be nice to do a project with one of the other elementary schools like we did with the high school and get some more trees on the grounds of the elementary schools, but that's down the road. Is there a contract or bidding process? I don't think so, but.
Is there a cutoff on the amount the tree cost?
Depends on the,
bidding?
We don't-
I don't think the town does any bidding, but I guess Dick Crawford would know that. I have no idea. So we were talking about places that might be high priorities to plant trees in the first few years. And we mentioned, I don't know what an environmental justice area, if that's been identified in the inventory. I think it has been. We thought the Vets Park could definitely use more trees, but they have to be trees that can withstand the horrible drainage problem there. We thought the linear bike path, a lot of the ash trees were taken down, so that might be a good priority. And town commons, but that depends on how the Parks Advisory Board goes forward with their plan. Any other thoughts about where might be priorities to start planting trees? Anybody?
I like where you're going with that. The places that require shade, you mentioned Vets Park. I can tell you that people flock to the trees, the few trees that are there, especially like if there's a baseball tournament, soccer tournament, stuff like that. I do think that places that have a lot of trees are known for a lot of the trees. If you go to like West Seneca Soccer Complex, there's trees all over, and people are sitting in the shade all the time. So I would say that that's a good one. And you mentioned the bike path and places that have heavy tree loss, especially if they were heavy ash trees. I could definitely see some value in putting some trees back there. But everything in that parentheses makes sense, right? We just don't have a list of priorities yet. But.
Right.
But that's what we're coming up with, right? We're trying to come up with ideas for this is what we should make a priority. And then if everybody agrees, so what we basically said was high traffic areas, right? So bike trails are heavily used for dog walkers, strollers, kids riding their bikes, and people like the shade, just like you said. Same thing with the parks for baseball, soccer, football. So we picked the places where the public is, that we can show what we're doing to showcase that Grand Island's planting some trees and provide these people some benefit, right? So that was why we picked what we picked. And unless someone has a different priority, again, maybe the Parks Department might say they want the Nike base to have all the trees, right? In which case then we need to consider, because we did suggest, different people maybe maintain the trees, right? So, but that's why we went where we went. And as long as nobody's disagreeing, we just keep the answers what we have today. Because honestly, they asked Diane and I questions. They expected answers right away, which we gave them. And they didn't say, here's the list of questions ahead of time. So they didn't really expect us to go get feedback from a whole bunch of different people, right? We're doing this because we want to be successful.
So let's go on to number 8. I don't know how we answered number 7 right now, but maybe we just did in our picking priorities of where we'd like to see more trees. Number 8 is something that we haven't done a lot of. We haven't had a lot of maintenance and care of trees once they're planted. the high school might be an exception.
Yeah,
And I-
definitely it is. I was going to ask if anybody, does the park department have do they have a staff that looks after town trees, or?
Well, that's a question we'll have to ask them. I know. I don't know what to say to that.
Do you think there'll be a division, like if it's in the town parks, the parks department's responsible, if it's on the the town owned right of way, it might be the highway department. Like, is it going to be like a split thing, or is it going to be a central thing?
That's a really good question. We can make it what we want it to be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and once
You
we
need a
hear,
plan people buy into, whatever group, because otherwise, it's useless.
I
Yeah,
would think,
there's
go ahead.
there's positives and negatives, right? So if one department did all of the trees, then you could say, oh yeah, that's the department's responsibility, but that might be too heavy a workload for one department. Whereas if you divide it up, then maybe, hey, filling up the water bags once every 2 weeks isn't so bad. Maybe we have we got the water truck, maybe, 1 week the parks department's using it, and then the next week, the highway department's using it, or something like that. Like, I'm just, I know that there's a lot of things that need to be considered here, with workload and stuff like that. I'm just trying to think if it was divided, it would be kind of less work for everybody versus, one department shouldering it all. But,
Yeah.
If the town is dedicated to it, there is, if you got one department that's in charge of it all, then, stuff's less likely to get missed, I suppose.
Maybe
Right, and that's why I think Diane sent the stuff to the other departments, right? So hopefully they can have those discussions, who should be doing those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least they're hopefully thinking about them.
Yeah, we do a
Right.
good job chopping up the sticks and little trees and stuff on a routine basis. If you could get something like that, would be nice for watering trees and planted trees, that type of thing.
It also probably depends on how many trees we plant. If we plant 5, it's not a big deal. If we plant 50, it is.
Right.
I
That's
was
what I
gonna-
say.
I'm kind of interested in maintenance, and maybe I could work on putting together some kind of a plan that we can share with everybody, or a plan that for tree maintenance overall, and that way we can at least have some point where somebody maybe not does it, but has the overall job of asking different groups that have the responsibility to make sure we maintain them, because when you plant trees, if you don't maintain them, you lose them. And I think your report, Jeff, that the ones in the school are doing well because the school takes care of them.
Yeah.
The ones that were planted, our rec department, they planted a number of trees around the roundabout, but they weren't maintained, so we lost a lot of them. So what I was suggesting is, I would like to take some time to try to gin up some plan for maintenance. And if anybody has any suggestions, I definitely would would like suggestions as to what should go into that maintenance plan.
Good idea.
Sam, my understanding, I attended, I'm on the tree committee, so I've attended some of the meetings with Davy Tree, and my understanding of the survey is that they create this multi-point document for every tree that they survey, and included in that is, so recommend pruning year 2. And then the town has access to that software on into the future. And so every time they maintain a tree, it becomes part of that record. So my suggestion would be, once they presented that information, you could take a look at it and see how that lends itself to creating a maintenance plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That seemed to me one of the strong points of having the survey done, was having that
Yeah.
kind of.
That's good, Sue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so question 8, I mean, I'm looking at it all, and since we can't really identify who's taking care of anything right now, we
Yeah.
really wouldn't have answers to any A through F. Wait, are we in any sort of adopted tree program? I don't think we are.
No,
I've never
No,
heard. Yeah.
we did ask about that, and Mariah explained what it was, and we can look into it if we want. It's where maybe a neighborhood or maybe a small group of landowners decide to drop a dot, like say they live in a cul-de-sac or something. They decide they want to take care of the trees in their cul-de-sac, and they would adopt those and be in charge of watering and so forth. That's the idea of it. We certainly don't have anything like that. She just said that some towns do, so she threw that in there. Number 9, who decides what gets planted and where? That kind of goes along with our, well, the criteria, I should say, goes along with our list of trees. Who decides what gets planted and where? Hopefully we will have, I don't know, I'll let you guys answer that.
Well, since we don't have a plan as to where to put these things, then we don't really have an answer for number 9. But we could develop one as we get our plan. We will be then deciding who gets plan. We could be developing answers to number 9.
Yeah, we might, for example, one year we might decide to do planting in Betts Park.
Yep.
And we would get people together who have worked in the parks and look at the tree lists and figure out where the trees should be planting and which trees. I could see that happening with our list of prioritizing where we want to plant trees.
All right, so that's the priority. So would you say, like, when we planted at Vets or we planted at the Commons, it was just kind of, groups getting together saying, okay, let's plant a tree here, and then we ask and it looks okay, and then we just kind of do it. So there's no
maybe
real.
you want to say we will plan on putting one together. On who decides on, we'll decide, we'll develop a planting plan, and that will include answers to number 9.
Yeah. We don't have a plan yet.
Right.
I'm just thinking, like, if they wanted to know what's going on now, I don't think there's any pattern or any organized group. We just kind of, hey, it's Arbor Day, let's plan.
Yeah. That's
Well,
been our.
we have the tree committee now, though, right? So maybe we just put down the tree committee, and that becomes one of their tasks.
But the tree committee is a function of the tree survey. When that's over, there's no tree committee.
There's
If
no, right, we're not a permanent committee.
Right. So if there's an
Right.
ordinance which is aspirational, then there would be. So right now, the only answer is, it's just what, whether it's a advisory board or the town, or now the highway department has someone who's trained as an arborist. I mean, it's all sort of happenstance, really.
Right.
Mhm.
And we have used Arbor Day as a focal point to make sure we do plant or give away trees. So
Mhm.
that's kind of been our pattern.
Yeah.
Right, but as we're meeting with the Parks Department and the town highway and everybody else, we should be making suggestions, right?
Who's
That
we?
either the Parks Department owns it or blah, blah. And if we want to own the type of trees to plant, then maybe that's, our board, right? But if we just say we don't know, nobody's ever gonna jump up and take ownership, right? At least in my opinion, most people don't jump up and take ownership.
Right.
But right now, we can't really answer that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a tough
No,
one to have an
but we
answer
are
to.
gonna meet with these other boards, so if we can suggest that the parks owns, watering the trees, we can put that in here, it says this is what we're gonna do. But doesn't mean it can't change. So
Yeah,
if we just answer everything as we have no plan, but let's make, I guess what I'm saying is let's try to make somewhat of a plan and get some answers.
Yeah.
If we have some time. So we had no time before, that was fine, so we just said, no, we don't have anything, but now that we've got, another couple of weeks, hopefully we can get the Parks Department that says, yes, they'll agree to water, or, they'll water 1 year, and, Highway Department waters another year or something, and then we can put down a real answer. This is our plan.
yeah. Okay. Number 10, once we planted a few trees one year in front of a business, it was a marina business up on the end of, oh God, I don't know. I normally we don't get requests for plantings, do we?
Now, are you talking about planting on private property or
Well,
or
that's-
city?
That's what it
town
sounds like.
property?
It says, can citizens request plantings near their homes or businesses? That is definitely private property.
I think the town has to answer that.
But it can
Yeah.
be right away too if
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the town may have gotten requests. We don't know.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Who does the actual installation of new trees? Blah, 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 blah.
No, it looks like that's various. I mean, the highway department does some, the parks department does
Right,
some.
right.
We do some.
And some of us, yeah, we have dug many holes in our lives
Mhm.
in the mud and everything else.
Yeah.
But for town trees, I mean, the town government would have to decide, who's going to be responsible for the town trees, and do they have the budget and the manpower to do it?
Right. True.
Yep.
But the question here, though, is that when you do we have been planting trees. Some were planted by the town, but some were planted by by the CAB. So I look at that question as very broad, not specifically what the town does officially, but just what happens within the town.
Is that a question?
No, I'm
Okay.
I'm just replying to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the town is doing it, the town will have to decide on budget and everything else. But this board or members of this board have planted trees, on their own without different organizations plant trees.
Well, we've always had to get permission from the town when we've done our Arbor Day stuff every year.
Yeah, but they say who actually does the installation?
The volunteers usually,
Exactly.
with a little,
that's what
with
I'm
a
saying,
little
that-
help, with a little help sometimes from parks or from highway.
Yeah. When we did those ones at town hall, those were big trees. So they had to bring in their equipment.
Right.
And when you did the school, Jeff got the school to provide some equipment. So
it just depends.
So different organizations, when they say who does the actual installation, I'm saying the answer to that is various groups.
Yeah.
Not part of a comprehensive plan, really. It's just sort of whoever.
Does
Okay.
it drive you nuts at how unorganized everything is?
That's what this illustrates.
Right.
Yeah, this is showing us
story.
how chaotic it is here.
Mhm.
I think this questionnaire is a good roadmap to do the organizing so that we can
Yeah.
we can have some kind of coherent plan in the town.
Right, that's the purpose.
It's all aspirational.
Number 12.
No.
You know,
No,
we don't
Mike,
get,
Mike, do you want to help us with the answer to number 12, Mike?
yeah, we don't
well,
get
there's no,
enough,
there's,
we don't get enough help from the planning board, that's for sure. I just,
I'm working on that number 12.
okay,
We'll see what happens.
yeah, okay,
That's really the tree ordinance.
yeah.
yeah.
Where's-
Yeah, 12
So
and
do we have
13.
any, I say no, but there is a landscape plan that really is not followed
Right,
when
You
I
know, we
think about
gotta
it.
bring that to a head also. We gotta
Mhm.
follow.
We've tried that. It just, is it the planning board? Is it code enforcement? And the
Yeah.
answer is it's everybody. Nobody, everybody kind of lets the developers off the hook when it comes to trees. So
yeah. But with the inventory behind us and when we let the public know about the results of that, I think there might be more interest in putting a little pressure on the planning board and the landscape plan and all that. So I think it will give us a little.
So the answer to 13 is yes, we do have legislation as it relates to planting of trees and developers. I mean, it exists.
Yeah,
Is it? The question isn't, is it enforced? The question is simply, does it exist? Well, we can refer to the proper part of our town ordinances.
mhm. I think we've probably addressed most of these to my satisfaction right now. When we discussed number 17 with Lori, well, Lori was not with us the whole time, but Mariah, what's your biggest challenge in regard to tree planting? Paul, you want to tell them what you said? Or not? Are you there, Paul?
Just trying to get off mute. No, I think we can let that one ride.
Okay, all right.
I think most people could figure it out.
Yeah, okay.
I think when we think
We
of,
deci- we
Oh, go ahead.
decided the biggest challenge is the town government
Mm,
and the way the town operates.
Hmm.
That's what we thought, but we could have other answers to it.
Commitment.
I think part of the answer to 15A is what we're experiencing right now. We're talking about climate change. We're talking about winds that are only going to increase over time. We're talking about issues like the ash borer, that's only going to increase over time. All the things that were revealed when we did our open space, not the plan, but the work that
Inventory.
with Western New York Land Conservancy. Yeah. I mean, the answer is, we can go back to that document,
Yeah,
include some of that information.
true. So one thing I'm going to do is look back. I'm going to send Mariah, I keep forgetting her name. I'm going to send her a few things and I'm going to look back at in the original grant, we wrote a pretty interesting, we wrote some parts about the past with our trees and I guess and we also, Mariah's going to send me a sample of a planting plan from Olean. It's not on the books yet, but they're close to getting it on the books. And they're supposed to send couple links to a couple other towns, Cheektowaga and Buffalo and Syracuse. Oh, that was in reference to tree ordinance.
Some of those
Anyway,
are already tree cities.
Mm.
yeah,
I looked up some of the examples, I just did a search online, and there are a number of cities that have, or towns that have, because Davy Tree does this all across the country. So they have a number of examples of what we're asked to do online. And, some of them include some really nice language, like we should include language about our heritage trees that, Grand Island was known for its stately white oaks. We probably have some of that language. Some of them reference back to historical documents, that, the oaks were grown to provide masts for the, ships that in this area, all that sort of information. We could go to the Historical Society maybe.
that's a great idea. Yeah.
But they're really very nice documents, the ones I read. Well, the one that I read, this guy, I'm like, whoa, this is really well written and well researched. And he happened to be somebody who writes on this for a living. So it was some town in Massachusetts. We might not have to go to that extent, but, I'm sure we have some language that we could include in it.
Yeah, and that was suggested a long time ago too by somebody. I don't remember who. But it's important to look at the history of the trees on the island and get some perspective from that. Actually, Mariah mentioned there's a lot of good towns in Massachusetts that have done really good planting plans and stuff. So.
Ones I read.
So what I can do, Jeff, I started typing up some of these answers that Paul and I had given, and I'll add a few more things from tonight and maybe just send it out to everybody, and then we can add a little more after we've met with some of these other departments. What do you think?
That's good.
And if any of you want to, if you're thinking about things, just send me little notes about what you might want included that you didn't think of tonight.
Okay. I just was jotting down some things too. So Diane, I just sent that to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You can, if there's anything on the list that I wrote that wasn't already incorporated in your list, you can
Okay.
add it. Just comments that the board made, just kind of writing it down, and
Thank you.
we'll see. Those are all fantastic questions. It will be great to get those organized and have answers to those questions.
Yeah. I think this highlights the amount that we don't have, but eventually we're going to have hopefully, we're going to make some really good improvements. So.
All right.
Thank you.
So I think the next thing on the agenda is just the tree ordinance update. If you're able to watch the 6th, there was, some comments on the tree ordinance, but as far as where it stands, I think Mike, you got a meeting on Monday. Is it
Yeah.
the
So
20th?
let me just speak on that. So a number of folks mentioned, whether there's a need. So this is one of the questions I want to put before this. I can't remember if the Conservation Board took a position on this, as far as I believe it was our suggestion to have a tree board. A number of individuals, which were very supportive of the tree ordinance, suggested that they felt that it might be better if it was just left within the realm of the Conservation Board. So I'm curious what folks are thinking on that one, whether we need a separate tree board or we should just have the tree board be under the Conservation Advisory Board.
Can I speak on that just a
Yep.
little bit? I do, I completely understand where they're going. And I do think that, if you look at the backgrounds of all the individuals on this board, that we do have a good mind for doing a lot of the stuff that is required of the tree board. The only thing that I would say was I would think that if that were on the town board's list of things that they were considering to be done, I would suggest increasing the size of the conservation board, because I don't think we have, I mean, we have very limited time, and then like, you know, calling like, you know, sporadic meetings, making sure we have that, or maybe not even like adding board members, but maybe adding maybe more alternates just to make sure that we can have these splinter groups. But I'm not exactly, I'm not exactly for that. I'm not against it. I don't know where I stand, but I'm kind of curious as to what the other members think about that.
So throwing it out to the rest of the board, thoughts?
Well, I agree, Jeff. I think if we take it on, then it should maybe, we need to expand our membership and maybe create like a subcommittee.
Right.
That's what I was thinking, Sue. I think because people were critical of having another advisory board, and because they said, oh, we can't even fill the ones we have.
You know, that's, I do
I don't know
have
that that's-
concern with that.
Well, what I was thinking might be good is to have a subcommittee, which we talked about, I don't know, a few years ago. A subcommittee of the Conservation Board, it doesn't need to be just Conservation Board members, maybe one or two from the community. But yeah, I think I
I
can see
remember the
us-
subcommittee got shot down pretty quickly for whatever reason. Do you remember what that reason was?
I don't remember.
I'm a little bit worried about that tree ordinance. If we say in there we have to have a response in 30 days,
Right.
people have to scramble quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would not be a scheduled meeting. It would be, okay, we've just received a permit. Now the tree board needs to convene a meeting. Now, how often is that going to happen? It's probably once a year, once or twice a year. So it's not a regular frequent occurrence.
Wait a minute.
So
There's so many developments coming on. Wouldn't it be
Yeah,
more
but-
often than that?
Or even in the last 12 months, I mean, really, Southpointe, I don't think there was any other since January of this year where there's
there's a lot of
clear cutting for a
lingering
project.
developments.
Okay.
What's that?
I think what
Rivertown?
Mike's saying is that there's a lot of like lingering developments where it's
Right.
like, you know, the plans were brought forth years ago and then they're expanding to a different phase or something like that. But I agree. So I was thinking about the math portion when I said, you know, add members, because you have to remember that you have to have a quorum, right? So if we were to do it, we would have to make sure we were at least 5 members who could meet when that subcommittee would meet. I would say, like, if there's not a limit to alternates, you add a couple alternates just to make sure we can get to that 5. If you add voting board members and increase it to 11, then our quorum increases to 6 instead of 5. So that doesn't help us. So I'm just thinking logically, making sure that we do things right. If it did fall onto our board, I think we have a decent amount of responsibility. I'm not saying we couldn't do it, but if we were to, if it was in the town boards, if it was the town board's idea before they passed the law to, instead of have a tree advisory board, to let that responsibility fall with the conservation board,
Right.
I would like you to consider perhaps adding a couple more alternate positions.
What do we have right
at
now? We have
least.
9 active, right? And 2 alts.
Right.
Is that correct? Okay, so that puts
That
us
is
at
correct.
11. If we had 2 more alternates
Mhm.
and then have them also be on the tree advisory
Wow.
board or something, we would just have to figure out how to.
That's a
Organize
pretty
that.
large group too. You know, we all have a lot of discussion, and I think if we get the group that large, it would be kind of hard to get through our agendas.
Yeah,
Just a
Yeah,
thought.
it's there's pluses and minuses, and you know that's the thing, and although definitely a board that has trees at the forefront, like that's all they do, would be ideal. If that were to fall on our plate, at the same time, like Dan's right, there'd be more people, but then like, would we need them more people in order to do these subcommittees? So it's a catch.
Mike, do you know if there's any other subcommittees on any boards?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean,
And I do agree with Jeff and everybody else, I think, is kind of saying it a little bit. Our plate is pretty full already.
All right,
I just don't know, to take that on is a pretty big thing to take on. And it will be disruptive, you know, when that permit does come through, the next one. You know, and if you look, I mean, has been no permit requirements yet. So Southpointe was one, but Webb Road, they haven't done any cutting on. East River, they haven't for the Gun Creek, they haven't for most of the other developments. Long Road, they have not done any clear cutting on. So I mean, it's not going to be often, but when it does hit, it's going to be pretty all consuming. And if there's anything else that we're in the middle of, which we're almost always in the middle of something, I do think that might be a challenge, but I did want to hear what everybody else thought.
what about, if an advisory board was established with the idea that they might meet quarterly at the beginning, or, I mean, it could be a board that doesn't meet very often, which, I don't know. I could see them maybe requiring that they meet quarterly, but then whenever, depending on whether the tree ordinance is passed, will determine how often
mean,
how often they need to meet.
Kind of what I would think, though, I would think you would want to, like you said, Diane, meet quarterly and do more than just the permit management, actually be
Yeah.
proactively looking at, you know, there is a tree committee already. Does it fall under there? So I guess that would be the first question. I mean, if there is a tree committee already, is that an area, and Diane, you're actually on that committee with Dick and several other individuals, right?
Right, and Sue's on it too.
So I mean,
Well,
is that where it goes?
but we're not a permanent committee.
Right,
We're supposed to see through to the end of the grant. And what happens after that, I don't know. I could see a tree board or a subcommittee being responsible for a lot more, like if we develop this planting plan, someone's going to need to kind of keep charge of it and check on it. And
right.
I could see either
Yeah,
a subcommittee.
I could see it's them taking on much more than just permits. I mean,
Yeah,
trees are important.
Yeah,
Yep, I would agree. So
I
I think
would
that's
think-
Mike,
how I'll respond. I did want to hear what people thought here, because that's one of the things we'll be discussing Monday night. So just
Okay,
in
so
terms
if
of,
you-
sorry, go ahead, Jim.
if you do have trouble filling a tree board, is there a way that you could say that, you know, in the event that there's not a quorum, members from the CAB may take a spot on the committee for that meeting? Do you know what I mean? Like, because you got to make sure that there's a committee that can meet. And so not all of us can meet, but some of us could meet. You know what I mean? Like, so
You know,
if you're worried about
I bet people line up for it, though. I have the feeling this
Okay.
one, we may not have a challenge filling. And, you know, we've
Okay.
almost always had multiple applicants for the conservation board. So I do think conservation and trees probably are a little less difficult to fill
yeah.
than some
Yeah,
of the other positions.
and I can think of other tasks they could work on, education or pamphlets or,
The tree management plan.
yeah, exactly.
Right, tree management. What's the
And,
list? of
and,
tree-
and
tree
exploring
plan?
what's going on with invasives right now and keeping up to date on some of that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot they could do.
So just in terms of the next step, so that's one of the things we're gonna quote unquote deliberate on Monday night during the workshop. So we're gonna actually take the feedback from the public hearings. We've received emails from several groups. So we're gonna be looking at the feedback that we've received. and looking at the law and deciding, do we want to make any further changes to the law? Or and keeping in mind, there's people on the pro tree ordinance and the anti-tree ordinance side. When we're done with this, neither group is going to be happy, but hopefully they'll recognize that we've met in the middle somewheres and we end up at a place at least where we get something that has some substance, not just symbolic. And I think that's the key, is we need something with substance, something that addresses what, a lot of people do have concerns. And hopefully we end up at that place, which I think one of the feedbacks, which I don't think people read the law as carefully as they should have. If someone illegally goes and, once we have a permit and does clear cutting, there needs to be a consequence for that. And there is a consequence for it. If they do get a permit, then there probably won't be, well, I shouldn't say probably. If they go through the right channels, then there won't be a consequence for clear cutting. It's just part of the process. Hopefully we're able to mitigate, the clear cutting and have some input into it as part of that process. And that's really ultimately, and it doesn't stop clear cutting. What it does is gives us an opportunity to have feedback and discussions, and hopefully a mitigation plan can be developed to limit the overall impact on whatever is happening. And part of it also is, that mitigation plan that that developer is going to be offering hopefully includes, I'm going to plant, 100 or 200 or whatever trees here, there, or in some location, or provide a budget, provide funds to provide the opportunity for the town to plant some trees somewhere. So anyways, the next steps are, we're deliberating Monday night during the workshop. We're going to be deciding what the next steps are. At the last meeting, right after the public hearing, we did appoint the town as the lead agency for seeker. The next step is to finalize the seeker, declare a negative deck, which is kind of a given on this one. And then are we ready to put it out to vote? I'm going to hope that we don't put it back into the committee process, which we've done. I don't know how many times, because if you think about it, the committees have provided feedback. We then change the law, and it's been an endless loop where, okay, now we've changed the law, so now we got to put it back through the committees, multiple committees. Multiple committees give feedback again, we change the law, and now we got to go back and put it through the committees. And that's a way in which, laws, which, whether they're good or bad, get killed, is by killing them in committee. And that's, I think it's a point where we need to reach a point where we say, okay, we've done this enough times, now let's put it up to a vote. Either it goes up or it goes down. And that's kind of where hopefully we're prepared to take that next step.
Were there other sticking points that, other than the advisory board, or what were
So
some
the
of the
advisory
others?
board, there was concerns about whether or not this thing had teeth. If someone went and did a clear cutting without a permit, it was believed that it was just a $230 fine. The $230 fine is a drop in the bucket. The real consequence is, okay, you just did a clear cutting, you're a developer or whatever. This is not a small property owner. This is a developer or a commercial property. At that point, there's the law does provide for, the replacement, ideally on the same location. They replant the trees. If it's not going to be at the same location, let's say, it's decided, okay, we're going to let them to go ahead with the development, but they did break the this ordinance. So there would be some kind of funds provided to plant, however many trees were cut down. Ideally, there would be a replacement plan for that many trees. And, that can be pretty significant. That's not a minor infraction or consequence for breaking that ordinance.
But you wouldn't consider raising that $250 fee?
Actually, you can't legally. 230 is the 230, I think, is the number, is the maximum we can fine. It couldn't be $230 a day, but at any one time, it can only be $230. And that's actually a town, a limit on town law consequence in that regards. But obviously, if you're going to, a tree is not cheap to replace.
Yeah.
If they have to replace trees, it's, that's that's far exceeds a $230 fine. And
One,
if you have to replace 100 trees at $30 or $40 a tree, you're talking, that's going to be something people are going to sit there and say, you know, maybe I'm not going to go rogue and cut them down without a permit. It's not just a little slap on the hand, and $230, they would laugh at that.
yeah. What
2,000
about-
trees, maybe not so much of a laugh.
What about the enforcement? I guess that concerns me a little.
Right.
Will the department that does the enforcing, will they have to be trained in any special way? I don't know.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, when there's a clear cutting, and you know, we're not talking just a few trees, we're talking Southpointe type clear cutting. The town knows when it occurs. So there, you put a stake in the ground, okay, they just did that. So I don't think detection is going to be a problem. And then the law basically will define what the consequence is. So I do think it should be fairly straightforward. I wouldn't complicate it.
Mhm.
So I don't see a big hurdle there to me.
Has this been passed through to get opinions from the enforcement people?
Which time and how many times? Yes, many, many, many times. This has
Okay.
been churning for 20 years. Every
Okay,
time, you know, we've received feedback.
yeah.
Mike, does the law have
So yeah, this keeps
provisions?
churning through that meat grinder. Sorry, go ahead.
Mike, does the law have provisions in there to, rather than being reactive all the time, doing some of that work up front during the development stages? I recall that CAB at one point had asked Southpointe to do a tree inventory, which I think never came back, at least to us. I don't know if it ever happened.
So this ordinance actually provides for that. It provides for a full mitigation plan. So that is proactive, not reactive.
Okay,
And in theory, if this ordinance, I mean, the developers are going to know the ordinance exists. And if it does have teeth, they're not going to ignore it and breach it. So therefore, they'll be coming forwards with a permit request. And as part of that permit request, it's required to include, okay, it's this many trees that are going to be cut down. It's this many acres. Here's our mitigation plan. These are the things we're, as a developer, doing to try and mitigate it. So that's all part of the new, what's currently being proposed. It could get changed still, but at this point, I do think that that part of it will exist, will continue to exist.
okay, if all that happens, that's a good thing.
Yep. Yeah, right now, that is not required. We ask as a favor, can you do this? This will actually require, you know, a mitigation plan, and that's part of the mitigation is, you know, describing what are you planning on doing, how many acres, how many trees, et cetera. You know, really describing what are they planning on doing, and, you know, and then the tree advisory board or whatever committee we end up settling on will then review it, say, okay, you know, you're not quite accurately describing it here or there, and, you know, provide feedback on, you know, maybe some additional mitigation, or they may very well say, you know, this is great, you've got a good mitigation plan. We sign off on it, gets passed by the town board, it goes out to, you know, goes through the process.
Jeff,
The
can I
total
ask
time
a
frame
question?
is 60 days. So it's 30 days for the tree advisory board, and then a total of 60 days total. Sorry, go ahead, Sam, yes.
Go ahead, Sam.
What, did we make any decision as to the tree board?
Well, the tree board is currently being called out as part of the process for we would have to create or form a tree board. We might have to have an interim plan where maybe the conservation board initially serves in that function until we hire and, or not hire, interview and bring in and, you know, constitute a tree board. Does that answer your question, Sam?
I mean, I'm not quite sure I understand what's going on. I think at one time we were talking about whether it should be part of the CAB or if it should be a separate board. And I don't think we ever answered our questions.
Yeah, so right now, the ordinance has it, which is really the ordinance that the Conservation Advisory Board, after getting feedback from multiple committees, settled on. They did leave in the law, the ordinance, a tree advisory board that's separate from the Conservation Advisory Board. So that's what we're discussing this coming Monday night. And right now, it's written that there would be a unique, and I think this board feels that it really should be a unique one, because they're going to have a lot of responsibilities, and we already have a pretty full plate. So I don't think it would be a good idea to have it part of the Conservation Advisory Board.
Oh,
Sam,
okay.
I'm curious what you think.
I think we should have a separate one.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking it doesn't have to be a tree board to really be functional, should have membership from the Conservation Board and the Rec Board at least. And
Okay,
then it can have other members to it, but it should
Yep.
be a separate board.
yeah, it sounds consistent with what we're saying. So you think the Rec and Conservation Board should, I do like that idea. I do like having the idea of having a couple members from both
Yeah.
as part of it, and
we
maybe some at
can't-
large.
Because we have an arborist as an employee, could he become part of that board, or wouldn't
I
that?
think that would make a lot of
Absolutely,
sense.
yes.
Yep, I would think they would be. I can't remember if the ordinance actually says that. It might. Can't remember.
I think
the
an earlier,
five-member-
I think it did, Mike. I think you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so that
ordinance,
might already be in the law, but I don't know that for sure. I can't recall how it's worded there. We've been pretty focused on the teeth of the law as opposed to the makeup of the tree advisory board. So that'll be a big part of the discussion Monday night. So right now it's up in the air where we're going with this, but hopefully we're headed towards a vote at some point in the next few months. It probably isn't near term, but hopefully before the end of the first quarter of 2022, hopefully we're ready to at least approve it or shoot it down. But I do think it needs to go to a vote. It's never gone to a vote. I think it's time to.
Getting closer.
You know, every time we do get a little closer, so I do think, there is some momentum. But we'll see how far it goes. We'll see.
Okay.
By no means is the path an easy one.
No.
It's a
Thank you for-
gauntlet, but I do think we see a path through the gauntlet. Now it's whether we can successfully dodge the things that pop out at us along the way.
Thank you for all your efforts, Mike.
Agreed. Thank you. Mike.
Thanks, and hopefully we get to see a vote soon.
Yep.
All right, let's see.
Won't be this year.
All right, anything else from the town board, Mike?
That's the main ones that I had. Quite a bit
Okay.
to begin with.
Any
Lot going on.
additional news, announcements, or comments?
Merry Christmas.
Yes. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
All right, Diane motions, Jim Zeppela seconds.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, any